Mrs. Kelly, I believe it's your husband. Please come right away before anyone else notices. It had been only 3 days since I laid Richard to rest beneath the ash tree in our family cemetery. The rosary was still tucked inside my coat pocket. I could still sense the heaviness of the fresh soil settling over his coffin. And now, Frank, our ranch manager on the outskirts of Nashville, was speaking in a voice I had never heard from him in the 25 years he'd served our family. My name is Kelly Anderson, 70 years old, and this is the story I've kept buried for far too long. Some secrets become heavier once the person who held them can no longer explain them. I drove the 2 hours to the ranch with my hands shaking around the steering wheel. The dirt path felt endless, lined with brittle cacti under the sharp January sunlight. When I pulled in, Frank was waiting near the gate, hat clutched in his hands. Mrs. Kelly, I'm sorry. I don't mean to pry, but I came across something. He brought me to the old horse stable. The same one Richard had shut down over 2 decades ago. No one had gone inside since, not me, not our son Michael. The wooden door groaned as Frank pushed it open, and that's when I saw it. A steel chest Richard had kept locked for as long as I could remember. He always claimed it held nothing more than ranch paperwork, and told me never to open it. But now the chest sat wide open. Inside were folders signed just a week before he died, trust documents, property deeds, letters, and right on top was an envelope sealed with wax, my name written in Richard's familiar handwriting, open only when I'm gone. My heart squeezed. 38 years of marriage, raising our son, sharing meals, our bed, even long silence. And Richard had chosen to leave behind a secret meant for me only after his death. As I reached for the envelope, my fingers trembling, something else caught my attention. A worn photograph taped to the lid of the chest. A striking young woman in a white lace dress. And she was not me. On the back, in ink almost faded away, it read August 15th, 1976, 1 year before Richard and I ever met. In that instant, everything seemed to stop. Frank stood a few steps behind me, his breath slow and careful, as if he knew he was witnessing something he had no right to see. But it was already too late. The chest lay open, and Richard's secrets were spilling into the dim light, drifting through the wooden roof. I slipped the photograph into the pocket of my black coat, the same one I had worn to his funeral. It still carried a faint trace of the incense from the church. Frank, I said, not bothering to turn around, how did you find all this? He cleared his throat. Yesterday, Mr. Martin, Mr. Richard's lawyer, stopped by. Said he needed to look over some documents before reading the will. He told me to open this old stable. I told him I didn't have a key. Mr. Richard never gave me one. Then he pulled a key out of an envelope and said, Mr. Richard left this with me. Go ahead. So I opened the door. He glanced inside like he was looking for something, then said, never mind, and walked out. Frank paused. I kept wondering, why did Mr. Richard keep this place locked all these years? What was he hiding? I exhaled. And you came back this morning? Yes, ma'am. And I found the chest already open, like someone wanted it to be left that way, on purpose. The words echoed in my mind. Richard was never careless. If the chest was open, it meant he wanted me to discover it, but not right away. Maybe only when I'd settled down. After the funeral. After the chaos. Or at least that's what he believed. I shut my eyes, memories flooding through me. 1977, the autumn fair in Denver, the day I met Richard. I was 23, helping in my aunt's fabric shop. He walked in tall, neatly dressed, his smile brightening the entire room. Do you sell imported lace? He asked. Yes, but the best batch sold out earlier today, I told him. He smiled. Then I'll wait until more arrives. He sat on a wooden chair near the counter for nearly 3 hours until my aunt finally chuckled. Son, we won't have any until next week. I know, he said, but I needed a reason to stay. That evening, he took me to a diner near the fairgrounds for burgers and fries. We talked for hours. He told me he was an agricultural engineer, had just inherited a vast ranch in Tennessee, and dreamed of modernizing the land while keeping its traditions alive. I want my kids to learn the value of the land and the work behind it, he said. That was the exact moment I fell in love with him. 6 months later, we were married in a small church. I wore a simple white cotton dress. When he saw me walking down the aisle, Richard cried. You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, he whispered. And for years, I believed him. I believed everything he ever told me. We moved to the ranch, a spread of rolling green hills surrounded by peach blossoms each spring. The main house was built of red brick, with a courtyard and a little fountain in the center. In the afternoons, I knitted while birds sang outside the windows. Richard worked from sunrise to sunset, tending to the workers and the crops. Evening after evening, we shared dinner: chicken soup, mashed potatoes, sometimes barbecue on holidays. Then we'd sit on the porch under the stars, holding hands in comfortable silence. For a long while, I thought we didn't need words at all. 2 years later, our son Michael was born. Richard carried him across the ranch, teaching him how to read the sky before a storm. "He'll be a good man," Richard would say. "He'll look after this land when I'm gone." Those were gentle years: laughter, warm mornings, and the smell of fresh coffee. But standing in front of that open chest now, with a stranger's photograph hidden in my pocket, I understood something I never had before. Our happiness had never been whole. Maybe Richard had been hiding something from the very start. And maybe I had been too in love to ever question him. "Mrs. Kelly?" Frank's voice pulled me out of my thoughts. "Would you like me to stay?" I looked at him, nearly 70, a man who had worked here even before I arrived. "Did you know Richard kept this chest?" He lowered his head. "Yes, ma'am. Mr. Richard told me never to mention it," said Frank. "This is something I have to handle myself. I don't want Kelly to worry." I figured it was just old paperwork, maybe debts. "And the photograph?" I asked quietly. He swallowed. "Ma'am, I swear I never opened that chest." I believed him. Frank wasn't a liar. His secrets were born of loyalty, not deceit. "All right," I said softly. "You can go. And please, don't say a word to anyone." He nodded, stepped outside, and gently closed the door behind him. I remained there alone, holding the wax-sealed envelope, along with 38 years of memories that suddenly felt unfamiliar to me. Sometimes we trust far too deeply. We convince ourselves we know everything about the one we love, yet life eventually shows us we never truly do. I sat without moving for nearly an hour, frozen in place. The envelope rested in my hand, untouched. I didn't have the strength to break the seal, because I knew that once it opened, nothing in my life would ever exist the same way again. Some truths, once revealed, cannot ever be taken back. I sat on an old, dusty wooden chair, the silence pressing in around me, pulling out the photograph again. I examined it more closely. The woman appeared to be in her 20s, her long hair pinned up with white flowers woven through it. Her lace gown was stunning. On her left hand glimmered a diamond engagement ring. Her smile glowed with the kind of joy only seen on a woman's most cherished day. On the back were the words, August 15th, 1976, and beneath that, almost erased, a single initial and the... I inhaled deeply and finally opened the envelope. My hands trembled so much I nearly ripped the page inside. There were several sheets, written in Richard's familiar slanted handwriting, dated just a week before his death. I began reading. "Kelly, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I'm sorry I never told you the truth while I was alive. For 38 years, I've been your husband, Michael's father, the man who vowed to love and protect you forever. And Kelly, I did love you completely. But I wasn't entirely honest. There is something I hid from you, something from before we met, something that would have destroyed everything between us. In 1976, I was engaged to a woman named Marcella. Everything was prepared: the church, the guests, her dress, our future. But 2 weeks before the wedding, Marcella disappeared. No goodbye. No explanation. Just a note saying she couldn't go through with it. That it had all been a mistake, and she hoped one day I'd forgive her. I never heard from her again. It broke me, Kelly. For months I questioned what I had done wrong, whether she loved someone else, or if I was to blame. Then I met you, and everything changed. You made me believe in love again and family in the future. I thought Marcella was just a forgotten mistake from long ago, a closed chapter. But 6 months ago, I received a letter from her. She was sick, Kelly. Very sick. And she came looking for me. Why? Because there was something she'd never told me. Something that changed everything. That was the end of the first page. My hands shook so violently, I nearly dropped it. My chest tightened as I tried to breathe. Richard had been engaged before we married. That alone wasn't unforgivable. Many people have pasts. But what shattered me was that in 38 years of life together, he had never once said a word. Decades of conversations, shared nights, whispered dreams and fears, and Marcella's name had never been spoken aloud. Why? What secret could be terrible enough to hide all that time? I turned to the next page. Kelly, I know this will hurt. You're probably wondering why I kept quiet. The truth is, I was afraid. I feared you'd think I never truly loved you. I feared Marcella's memory would stand between us. I feared losing the only good thing I ever had. But after her letter arrived, I knew I couldn't leave this world without telling you the truth. Marcella wrote to me from a hospital in California. She said she had late-stage cancer, with less than a year left, and before she died, she wanted to confess something she'd kept hidden all these years. Kelly, when Marcella left me in 1976, she was pregnant with my child, and she never told me. The letter slipped from my fingers. No. It couldn't be real. The room spun as my heartbeat pounded in my ears. Richard had a child before Michael, one he never knew about, or worse, one he had known about and never mentioned. I forced myself to pick the letter back up, even though every sentence cut deeper than the last. Marcella said she ran away because she was terrified. Her family was strict, her father quick-tempered. When he discovered she was pregnant out of wedlock, he threatened to disown her. She had no choice but to leave. She moved to California, gave birth, and put the baby up for adoption. A boy, Kelly. A son I never knew existed. Marcella wrote because before she died, she wanted to find him, to know what kind of life he'd lived. She begged for my help. I tried so many times during these past 6 months to tell you, but I never knew where to begin. So I hired a private investigator to locate him, the baby, now a man around 50, and he found him. But before I could bring myself to tell you, my doctor informed me that my heart was failing and my time was running short. I knew I wouldn't be able to explain everything face to face, so I left this letter for you to reveal the truth and to ask you to finish what I could not. The man's name is inside the file in the chest. His address, the details, everything the investigator uncovered, it's all there. Kelly, I know this is unbearable. You have every right to be furious, and I understand. But for everything we shared, I'm asking you, please find him. Tell him who his father was. Give him the one thing I never had the chance to give. The truth. I have loved you always, Richard. The letter slipped from my fingers. I wept harder than I had at the graveside, harder than when his coffin disappeared beneath the earth. I cried because the man I trusted for 38 years suddenly felt like a stranger. I cried because the life I believed was built on love had been held together by silence. And worst of all, it hit me that if Richard had another son before Michael, then Michael unknowingly had an older brother somewhere. A man who likely had no idea Richard ever existed. I wiped my tears and looked inside the chest again. Under the letter was a yellow folder marked Private Investigation, R. Anderson case file. I pulled it out and opened it. The first page held a photograph of a man in his late 40s, dark hair streaked with gray, deep-set eyes, a faint, familiar smile. He looked shockingly like Richard. Below the picture were the words, Ethan Miller, residence, Sacramento, California. Occupation, high school teacher status, divorced, no children. I closed my eyes. In that instant, I knew my entire life had split into two parts before I opened the chest and after. Because now a decision had to be made. Tell Michael he had a brother, find Ethan, and reveal everything, or bury the secret forever alongside Richard. I stepped out of the stable as dusk fell. The sky had deepened to a dark violet, the hills swallowed by shadows. Frank was gone, and the ranch lay quiet. I slid into my car, tucked the file and the letter into my bag, and drove back toward my home in Nashville. The whole drive, one thought circled endlessly. Richard wanted me to tell the truth. But at what cost? Telling Ethan that his biological father had died without ever meeting him. Could anything be more cruel? Telling Michael he had a brother might shatter the perfect image he'd always had of his father. And admitting it all to myself meant facing the fact that the man I loved had never truly trusted me with his deepest past. When I finally reached home, it was midnight. The living room was dark. Michael had already left for Texas with his wife and 2 kids after the funeral. I sat on the sofa, the file resting in my hands, and in the stillness of that empty house, I made my decision. I would find Ethan, not because Richard asked, but because Ethan deserved to know. He had the right to understand where he came from, whose parents were, why he had been given away. Even if reopening that wound meant revisiting nearly 50 years of buried pain. For the next 3 days, I did nothing. The file remained on the dining table. Richard's letter stayed inside my purse. Ethan's photograph lay in the nightstand drawer beneath old socks. I couldn't bring myself to look at any of them. Every glance felt like my heart was breaking all over again. I tried to pretend life was still normal, brewing coffee, watering the garden, tying the vines the wind had knocked loose, making the bed, washing dishes, all the small motions that make it seem like everything is still in order. But inside, I was hollow. Every corner of the house whispered Richard's name, the armchair, where he read the Sunday paper, the blue ceramic mug he used each morning, the closet still full of plaid shirts that smelled faintly of lavender cologne, and with each memory came 1,000 questions. What had he intended to tell me? Had he ever truly planned to confess? Or had he chosen to carry this secret to his grave? On the 4th day, Michael called. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked, worry filling his voice. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I lied. "Just resting. Are you eating well? I can take a few days off work and come stay with you." "That's not necessary, Michael. I'm really doing fine." There was a long pause on the line. "Mom, I know this is hard. Losing Dad, it's something I never prepared myself for. But you're all by yourself out there, and it worries me." My throat tightened. "I'm not alone, sweetheart. I have you, the kids, and Fernanda. If you want, you can come to Tennessee more often," I added softly. "Or I can fly to Texas whenever you need me." Fernanda, Michael's wife, had always treated me with genuine kindness, a gentle soul who made me feel welcome from the moment we met. "I know, Mom," he said quietly, "but if you ever need someone to talk to, or if you need anything at all, just call me. Anytime." "I will, I promise." When the call ended, I sat staring at the screen for several minutes. Michael, the child Richard and I had raised in this very house, the boy who took his first steps on the front lawn, who cried on his first day of college, how could I possibly tell him his father had another son? How could I make him understand something even I barely understood? I couldn't. Not yet. That same night, I reopened the file. I couldn't stop myself. Ethan's photograph looked back at me from the first page, dark eyes, the same soft smile Richard always had. I read through the details slowly. Here her whole life. That was simply who Sophia was: practical, fast, straightforward, allergic to nonsense. We sat down at the table together. For a moment I couldn't speak, then finally whispered, "Sophia, I need to tell you something." Her eyes locked onto mine, steady, unblinking, refusing anything less than the truth. "It's about Richard, isn't it?" I nodded. "Is it bad?" I drew a long breath. "Very bad." Sophia reached for my hand. "Then tell me." So I told her everything: Frank's call, the open chest, the photograph of Marcella, Richard's letter, and finally the truth about Ethan. She didn't interrupt me once. She just listened, her gaze fixed on me, absorbing every word. When I finished, she sat in silence for a moment before muttering, "Idiot." I blinked. "Sophia, my idiot brother," she snapped, her voice trembling with anger. "How could he hide something this huge from you for decades?" "Sophia, don't blame him. No, Kelly, don't you dare defend him. I loved my brother, but this is unforgivable. He always thought he had to shoulder everything himself, like keeping quiet was some kind of shield, but all he did this time was hurt you." She turned toward me, eyes blazing. "He didn't protect you, Kelly. He handed you a live grenade, and now you're the one stuck dealing with the explosion." I couldn't argue because she was right. If you're listening to this, whether you're at home, at work, or driving somewhere, drop your city's name in the comments. Sometimes just knowing someone else is out there makes the weight feel a little lighter. Sophia squeezed my hand again. "So, what are you planning to do now?" I shook my head slowly. A part of me wants to find Ethan and tell him everything, but another part is terrified. I'm scared Michael will be angry with me for keeping it from him. I'm scared Ethan won't want to hear any of it. And I'm scared it'll destroy everyone's memory of Richard. Sophia let out a long sigh. "Kelly, Richard made a huge mistake. But that doesn't mean you're responsible for fixing it." "He asked me to," I said quietly. "He had no right to put that on your shoulders," she said sharply. Her words cut deep, because they were true. Richard shouldn't have left this burden to me. But doing nothing, letting Ethan go through his entire life without knowing anything, made me feel no better than Richard himself. "I don't know what to do, Sophia," I whispered, tears sliding down my cheeks. She pulled me into her arms. "It's all right, Kelly. Feeling lost is normal. Just remember, whatever you choose, I'll be right here beside you." And in that moment, I understood something important. Richard might have left me with a heavy weight to carry, but I wasn't carrying it alone. I had Sophia, I had Michael, and I had my own strength. I still didn't know what choice I would eventually make, but I understood one thing clearly: I would face whatever came the same way I always had. That night, Sophia stayed by my side. She cooked a simple vegetable soup, and insisted I eat it even though I could barely swallow anything. And we ended up watching an old black and white film that neither of us really paid attention to. We simply needed quite a warm presence in the same room. Before going to bed, she took hold of my hand. "Kelly, promise me one thing." "What is it?" "Don't decide anything this week. Let your heart rest." I nodded. "I promise." But later, when Sophia was asleep on the couch, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling as if answers were written there. Even though I'd promised her, I couldn't stop thinking. I needed to understand more about Marcella, about 1976. About the baby she gave up, the baby now known as Ethan Miller. The next morning, while Sophia was making coffee, I told her exactly what was circling in my mind. I need to go somewhere. She turned sharply. "Where?" "To Sacramento." She froze, then slowly faced me. "Kelly, you just promised you wouldn't rush into things." "I'm not rushing," I said quietly. "I won't speak to him. I need to see him. To understand the life he has before I make any decisions." "That sounds dangerously close to stalking," she muttered. "No," I whispered. "It's self-protection. If I'm going to step into his life, even slightly, I need to know who he is." Sophia studied me for a long, heavy moment before exhaling deeply. "Fine. But you're not going alone." "Sophia, no. I'm coming with you." End of discussion. I looked at her, seeing the same fierce determination Richard used to show, and I gave in. "All right, we'll go together." 3 days later, we boarded a bus headed for Sacramento. We'd agreed not to fly, no paper trails, no questions, no attention. The bus took nearly 7 hours, passing endless farmland and small towns that blended together like half-remembered dreams. Sophia tried to chat about her daughter's trip to Europe, her grandchildren, her home renovations. But I barely absorbed any of it. Each mile dragged me closer to a truth I wasn't ready to confront. Around noon, we checked into a small, quiet, unremarkable downtown hotel. After settling in, Sophia pulled the file from her purse. "Here," she said, "his address 456 Liberty Street, American District." "What now?" "I want to go to the high school where he teaches," I said, "just to see him from afar." She nodded slowly. "All right, let's go." We took a cab to Public High School number 12, a modest 2-story white and yellow building. Students streamed out laughing, filling the courtyard with noise. Sophia and I stood across the street beneath a maple tree. "What time does he get out?" she asked. "The file says around 2. It was 1:40. 20 minutes later, the gates opened and teachers began walking out. My heartbeat thudded painfully, as if it were echoing in my ears. Then I saw him. Ethan walked out carrying a backpack, a water bottle in one hand. He wore a pale blue checkered shirt, jeans, and worn-down shoes. His hair was gently ruffled by the wind, and his glasses slid slightly down the bridge of his nose. He looked tired but peaceful. He paused, checked his phone, slipped it into his pocket, adjusted his backpack, and started down the sidewalk. "That's him," I whispered. Sophia squeezed my hand. "Are you okay?" I didn't respond because I truly wasn't. Seeing him felt like watching Richard step out of the past, the same walk, the same tilt of the head when thinking. My God, he was Richard's son. There was no mistaking it. We followed at a distance. I didn't know whether what we were doing was wrong or intrusive, but I needed to understand who this man had grown into. Ethan walked 4 blocks before stopping at a small corner cafe. He ordered a drink, sat by the window, pulled out a book, and began reading. Sophia and I stood across the street, observing quietly. "What are we doing, Kelly?" she murmured. "What are we actually searching for?" "I don't know," I said softly. "I just needed to see him, to know what his world is like before I turn it upside down. Because that's what will happen, isn't it? If I tell him the truth, everything he knows will collapse, just like my life did when I opened that chest." We watched him for almost an hour as he read, took slow sips of coffee, and occasionally stared out the window with the distant gaze of someone who lived a lot inside his own thoughts. At one point, a young woman came to his table, smiling, saying something lighthearted. Ethan returned the smile, but shook his head politely. She walked away, and he returned to his book. "He's lonely," Sophia whispered. "You can see it." She was right. There was a quiet emptiness around him, not sadness exactly, not bitterness, but the solitude of someone who had never quite found where he belonged. Eventually, Ethan left the cafe. We followed again. He browsed a used bookstore for nearly half an hour, turning pages with deliberate care, as though each one held something precious. He bought a few thin poetry books, then stopped at a bakery for bread and another coffee. Finally, he reached his apartment building, a simple beige 3-story structure, neat and modest. He climbed to the second floor and unlocked his door. Across the street, through a small gap in the curtain, I saw him set down his bag, boil water, and sit on the couch with one of his new books. "Kelly," Sophia said gently, "we've seen enough. Let's go." But my feet wouldn't move. I was staring into the life of a stranger, a man who should have been part of my family. I kept imagining all the possible paths. If Richard had known from the beginning, if Marcella had told him, if things had unfolded differently, maybe Ethan and Michael would have grown up as brothers. Maybe he would have had a different childhood. Maybe his whole life could have been happier. That night, back at the hotel, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the bed, staring at the city lights spilling through the window. Sophia slept in the next bed, her breathing steady, while my mind kept circling around Ethan, his quiet life, his calm face, the distant look in his eyes at that cafe. Did he know he'd been adopted? Had he ever wondered about his real parents? Did he ever feel something missing? The next morning, Sophia said something that completely stunned me. "Kelly, what if we find Marcella?" I looked at her in shock. "Marcella?" "Yes. Richard said she was sick in a hospital here. Maybe she could tell us more." I froze. Part of me wanted to avoid her forever, but another part knew Sophia was right. I needed to hear the truth from Marcella herself. Why she left, why she hid everything from Richard, why she gave the baby away. Only then could I understand the real story. I called the private investigator Richard had once hired, introduced myself, and asked about Marcella. His voice turned serious. "Mrs. Anderson, I'm sorry, but I have to be honest with you. Mrs. Marcella's condition is critical. When Mr. Richard hired me, she was still undergoing treatment, but according to my latest report, she was moved to palliative care 2 weeks ago." My heart dropped. What does that mean? It means the doctors can't do anything more for her. She has a few weeks, maybe just a few days. I closed my eyes. Marcella was dying. If I didn't see her now, I would lose my only chance. Where is she? St. Mary's Hospital in Sacramento. Oncology ward. Room 312. Thank you. He paused, then said, "One more thing. She knows Mr. Richard has passed away. I informed her last week. The hospital staff told me. No one has visited her since." I swallowed hard. "I understand. Thank you." When I turned to Sophia, she asked, "What did he say?" "Marcella is in the final stage. She knows Richard is gone. She doesn't have much time left." Sophia sighed softly. "Do you want to see her?" I nodded slowly. "Yes, but I'm scared." "Scared of what?" "I don't know what I'll feel when I look at her." Sophia wrapped her arms around me. "Kelly, you're the strongest woman I know. Whatever you feel when you see her, it's okay. You don't have to act brave. Just be yourself." I took a deep breath. "Okay, let's go." An hour later, we were standing in front of St. Mary's Hospital, a tall white building with glass doors gleaming under the afternoon sun. We took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The oncology ward was quiet, with the sharp smell of disinfectant mixed with a heavier scent, the scent of good buzz. Room 312. The door was slightly open. I stopped. Sophia squeezed my hand. "Ready?" I wasn't, but I nodded and pushed the door open. The room was small and bare, just a bed, a chair, and a window with gold sunlight spilling in. Marcella lay on the bed. The young woman from the old photograph was gone. All that remained was a fragile body, pale skin, thin white hair, hollow eyes, hands resting stiffly on the blanket. But when she saw me, her eyes widened. "You," her voice was faint. "You're Kelly." I stared at her in shock. "You know me?" "Richard showed me your picture. A few months ago, when he came to see me." My breath caught. "Richard came to see you?" She nodded slowly. "Yes. Before he died, he came to find me. He asked about our son." My legs felt weak. I sat down in the chair beside her. Sophia stood behind me, her hand resting gently on my shoulder. Marcella opened her eyes again. "I didn't think you'd come. I thought you'd hate me." "I don't know you enough to hate you," I said quietly. "But I need to know the truth. All of it." She nodded weakly. "I'll tell you everything. Because I don't have time left to keep secrets." She drew a difficult breath. I reached for the water, but she shook her head. "Just let me speak while I still can." Then she began to talk, and I just listened in silence. "I met Richard in 1975, she said, voice trembling. "I was 22, he was 25. A mutual friend introduced us at a party in San Diego. Richard had just graduated. I was studying to become a teacher. We fell in love quickly, too quickly maybe, but it was real. He was unlike any man I'd ever met, kind, respectful, full of dreams. I didn't interrupt her. I just listened. 6 months later, he proposed. I said yes immediately. I truly believed I had found where I belonged. Her voice trembled. Then I found out I was pregnant. It was June 1976, just 2 months before the wedding. I took the test in secret, and when the result came back positive, I was terrified. Why? I asked softly. You and Richard were about to get married. She gave a tired, bitter smile. Because of my father. He was cruel, rigid, and extremely religious. To him, getting pregnant before marriage was an unforgivable sin. Even if the wedding was only 8 weeks away, he would have seen it as the greatest disgrace of his life. She paused, tears sliding down her cheeks. I knew if he found out, he'd throw me out, cut me off, call me a shame to the family, and worse. I knew he'd ruin Richard. My father hated him, said he had no ambition, that his family's farm made him small. He only agreed to our engagement because my mother begged him. But he was waiting for a reason to end it. The pregnancy gave him that reason, so you left. I whispered, yes. She nodded, crying freely now. I wrote Richard a letter, told him I couldn't marry him, that I didn't love him, that everything had been a mistake, but it was all a lie. I loved him with all my heart. I only wanted to protect him and our baby. She swallowed hard, so I left that night, took a bus to California. Disappeared. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand, her voice growing weaker. I sat silently, heart aching, listening to the woman my husband once loved uncover a truth buried for almost 50 years. I stayed with a distant cousin, she continued. I told her I'd broken up with my boyfriend and needed a place. She didn't ask questions. She just let me stay. I lived quietly for months, scared, lonely, waiting. Her eyes filled with tears again. Ethan was born on May 3, 1977, in a public hospital. I was completely alone during the birth. No mother, no friends, no Richard. Her voice cracked. When I saw him for the first time, when I held him, I knew I had made the biggest mistake of my life. She broke down in silent, trembling sobs. That baby, he looked just like Richard. The same eyes, the same nose, the same hands, and I knew I couldn't keep him. Why? Sophia asked softly behind me. Because I couldn't raise him, Marcella whispered. I had no money, no job, no one. If I went home with a baby, my father would have made both our lives a living hell. She closed her eyes. 3 days after giving birth, I gave him away. The room fell silent. Marcella kept crying, and I didn't know what to feel: anger, pity, sorrow. Maybe all of it at once. After a long moment, I asked, "And then what?" "I tried to rebuild my life," she said. "I became an elementary school teacher. Later, I married. Divorced. Married again. I got pregnant again, but lost the baby halfway through." Her voice grew smaller. "And every day for 47 years I thought of Ethan, wondering where he was, if he was safe, if he hated me for leaving him." "You never tried to find him?" Sophia asked gently. "Never," Marcella admitted. "I was afraid. Afraid he'd reject me. Afraid the wound would open again. Afraid of my own guilt." She turned her eyes toward me, full of regret. "When I was diagnosed with cancer 2 years ago, I realized my time was running out. That's when I started searching for Richard. I didn't know if he was alive, if he'd found happiness, if he had a family." Her voice drifted, fading like a candle in the wind. "I just knew I had to find him," she whispered. "I had to tell him the truth before I died." "How did you find him?" I asked. "I searched online." The name Richard Anderson appeared. A farm owner in Tennessee, married to Kelly Anderson, with a son named Michael. She looked directly at me, her eyes full of guilt. "When I saw the photo of him with you, I realized he'd built a good life. It broke me and comforted me at the same time. I had carried the secret alone for my entire life, while he lived happily without me." She drew a shaky breath. "I wrote him a letter. I told him everything about the baby, the adoption, and I asked for forgiveness. I didn't expect him to reply, but he did. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it might burst." "What did he say?" "He wanted to see me." Her voice quivered. 7 months ago, Richard came to California. It was the first time we'd seen each other in over 40 years. "How was it?" I asked. Marcella gave a faint, painful smile, one that held sorrow and relief at the same time. "Richard was angry. And he had every right to be. He told me I had stolen the most precious thing from him, the chance to know and raise his own child. She paused, then continued quietly. But he also forgave me. He said, Marcella, the past can't be changed, but we can do one thing right, find Ethan and tell him the truth. She swallowed. Then he hired a private investigator. It took 4 months to find Ethan. When the results finally came in, Richard visited me again. He brought photos and told me everything about him. How did you feel? I asked, my voice unsteady. I felt relieved, she whispered. Ethan was doing well. He had a stable job. Not rich, but peaceful. And he looked just like Richard. She closed her eyes. Richard said he was going to meet him, tell him the truth, but that he wanted to prepare first. A tear rolled down her cheek, then he died. Yes, I whispered. The investigator told me a week ago, she continued, and I understood then this was my punishment. God was making me pay for what I'd done, because now Ethan will never know who his father really was. I leaned closer. Marcella, I said gently but firmly, Ethan knows he was adopted. She nodded slowly. Yes, his adoptive parents told him when he was 15. But he never tried to find his biological parents, not according to the investigator. Why not? Sophia asked softly. Because his adoptive parents were good to him, Marcella answered. They loved him, raised him as their own son. Ethan is loyal. He didn't want to hurt them by looking for someone else. I closed my eyes. Ethan hadn't searched for the truth because he didn't want to hurt the people who raised him, just like I didn't want to hurt Michael by revealing his father's secret son. We were the same, both prisoners of loyalty. Kelly, Marcella whispered. I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I've hurt you. Hurt Richard, hurt Ethan, but I still want to ask for one thing. I'm listening. Please find Ethan. Tell him the truth. Tell him Richard wanted to meet him. Tell him I regretted everything, that I never stopped thinking about him. Not for a single day. Give him what I could never give him. A family, a past, a place to belong. I couldn't give her an answer. I didn't know if I had the strength. Before I could speak, Marcella continued, There's one more thing, Kelly. I froze. What is it? She took a weak breath. Richard left something for Ethan, something he didn't mention in the letter he gave you. I know about the documents, the photos, the letter, no. She shook her head. Something else. He changed his will 2 weeks before he died. A portion of the farm was transferred to Ethan's name. The world stopped moving. What did you say? Richard wanted his son to have something, even if they never met, even if he never got to be a father. He just wanted to leave a trace. A way of saying, you matter. You always mattered. I walked out of the hospital room on shaking legs. Sophia caught my arm as we went down the stairs. I couldn't think. Richard had changed his will. Left part of his estate to a son he never met. That meant when the will was read, Michael would know everything. I kept asking myself, did Richard do the right thing? Should he have told me before he died? Should he have left me to carry this burden alone? And if you were me, what would you do? Would you tell Ethan the truth, or let everything stay buried forever? That night in the hotel, Sophia and I didn't speak. We sat side by side on the bed, staring into nothing. Finally, she whispered, Kelly, you have to tell Michael before the lawyer reads the will. No matter how hard it is, it's the right thing. I closed my eyes. I knew she was right, deep down. I had always known that one day the truth would come out, and when it did, nothing would ever be the same. The bus ride back to Nashville felt endless. I rehearsed everything I would say to Michael, every reaction he might have. Would he forgive me? Would he understand? When we arrived, dawn was breaking. Sophia hugged me before getting into a cab. Call me after you talk to Michael, no matter what time. I will. Kelly, you're stronger than you think. But I felt empty, like all my strength had drained away. I reached home as the sun rose. I set down my suitcase, poured water, sat at the dining table, and dialed Michael's number. He answered after 3 rings, voice heavy with sleep. Mom? Oh my God, are you okay? It's 6:30 in the morning. Michael? My voice trembled. You need to come home today. As soon as possible. What's wrong? Are you sick? No, but I need to talk to you. It's very important. Silence. It's about Dad, isn't it? I closed my eyes. Yes, I'll come. 3 hours. I'll catch the earliest flight. Thank you. I love you. You're scaring me, Mom. I'm sorry. I'll see you soon. Those 3 hours crawled by. I showered, dressed, made coffee, doing everything without thinking. If I stopped, I knew I wouldn't be able to go through with it. At 10 a.m., Michael walked into the house, tired, tense, carrying a small suitcase. "Mom," he said, hugging me tightly. "What's going on?" "Sit down, son." We sat in the living room, on the same sofa where Richard used to sit with us. Michael watched me, confusion on his face. "Michael," I began, voice trembling, "what I'm about to tell you will change everything you thought about your father." He stiffened. "Did Dad do something?" "No, honey. He didn't do anything wrong, not intentionally. But he kept a secret too big to stay buried." "Mom, just tell me." "Before your father met me, he was engaged to another woman." Michael blinked. "Okay, a lot of people were in relationships before." "She was pregnant," I said softly, "pregnant with your father's child." Silence. Michael froze, shock spreading across his face. "What?" "Your father had a son, but he never knew. She ran away and gave the baby up for adoption." Michael shot up from the sofa. No way. "You're saying I have a brother?" "Yes. And Dad knew. He found out 6 months ago. I told him everything: Frank's phone call, the chest, the letter, the trip to Sacramento, Marcella, and finally the will." When I mentioned that last part, Michael stopped. "Dad left part of his estate to him." "Yes." "To someone he never met." "Yeah." "And when were you going to tell me? After you already knew? How long have you kept this from me?" "Only a few days, Michael. I just found out myself." "But you knew and you said nothing. Why? Why didn't you tell me right away?" I stepped closer. "Because I was scared. Scared you'd hate your father. Scared you'd be hurt. Scared I'd lose you." "Lose me?" His eyes filled with tears. "Mom, I would never leave you. Everything I believe feels like a lie." "It wasn't a lie." "It was. Dad hid this from us. From everyone. He lived 38 years with that secret. And now I find out I have a brother I never even knew existed." He sank onto the couch, covering his face. "What's his name?" "Ethan Miller." "Where does he live?" "Sacramento. He's a high school teacher." "And you've seen him?" "No, only from a distance." "What's he like?" I hesitated. "He looks a lot like your father." Michael closed his eyes, and then he started to cry. I had never seen him cry like that. Not when he broke his arm at 8. Not when his girlfriend left him. Not even at his father's funeral. Michael began pacing, holding his head. "This can't be real." "But today," he cried like a child. I sat beside him and held him. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. It's not your fault," he whispered, "but it hurts. It hurts that Dad didn't trust us enough to tell the truth. He wanted to protect you." "No, he wanted to protect himself. Because telling the truth meant facing his past, and he wasn't brave enough." We sat in silence for a long time. Michael wiped his tears, stood up, and walked over to the window, staring out at nothing. "When will the will be read?" "In a week," I replied. "Mr. Matthews, the lawyer, called yesterday. He said it's urgent, because Ethan's name is listed in it." Michael exhaled slowly. "Mom, do you want me to meet him?" I froze. "I don't know, son. That's something you have to decide for yourself. But Dad wanted us to meet him, didn't he? That's why he changed the will." "Maybe." Michael turned to face me again. "Then we should do it. We should find Ethan and tell him." "Are you sure?" "No, I'm not sure of anything." He shook his head. "But if we don't do this, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering what would have happened if we had. I'm done with secrets, Mom. I don't want any more." My heart swelled with pride. My son, braver than his father, wiser than I ever was. "All right, son," I said softly. "We'll do it together." That night Michael stayed home. We had noodle soup for dinner, eating mostly in silence. Neither of us was hungry. Later, we sat in front of the TV, watching something we weren't really seeing. After a long pause, Michael asked quietly, "Mom, do you think Dad ever really loved us?" The question cut straight through me. "Of course he did, sweetheart. He loved us with all his heart. Then why did he keep this from us?" "Because people are complicated," I said gently. "We can love and still cause pain. Your father wasn't perfect, but he was a good man." Michael nodded slowly. "I miss him." "So do I." 2 days later, we flew to Sacramento together. This was something the family needed to face as one. We arrived around noon, rented a car, and drove to Public High School number 12. It was Friday, and classes were still in session. We parked across the street and waited. At exactly 2 p.m., just like the report had said, Ethan walked out through the school gates. Michael saw him for the first time and froze. "God, he looks exactly like Dad." "He does," I whispered. "That's my brother." "Yes. we watched Ethan walk along the sidewalk with his backpack and a coffee cup. Suddenly, Michael opened the car door. "Michael, what are you doing? I'm going to talk to him. If I don't do it now, I never will." I rushed after him. We crossed the street. Ethan was about 60 feet away. "Excuse me," Michael called out. Ethan turned, surprised. As we approached, Michael took a deep breath. "You're Ethan Miller, right?" Ethan nodded cautiously. "Yes. Do we know each other?" Michael glanced back at me. I gave him a small nod. "My name is Michael Anderson," he said. "I think you're my brother." Ethan's expression shifted from confusion to shock in seconds. "What? Your biological father," I said softly, "was Richard Anderson. I was his wife and Michael is our son." Ethan stared at us, speechless. I don't understand." "I know this is hard to take in," I said gently. "Maybe we could talk somewhere more private. There's a lot we need to tell you." He hesitated, then nodded. "All right, there's a coffee shop on the corner." We sat at a table in the back, ordered coffee, and told him everything from the beginning. Ethan didn't interrupt once. He just listened, gripping his cup tightly, his hands trembling. When we finished, he sat silent for a long moment before speaking. I always knew I was adopted," he said quietly. "My adoptive parents told me when I was 15. But I never searched for my biological parents. I didn't want to hurt the people who raised me. They were my real parents." He paused. "But now you're telling me my father died before I could meet him, that I have a brother, and that there's an inheritance. How am I supposed to feel?" Michael leaned in. "I don't know how to feel either. Honestly, I'm confused, angry, sad, everything at once." "You didn't know I existed?" Ethan asked. "No. I only found out 3 days ago. I was angry too at Dad, at Mom, at the whole world, but..." Ethan whispered. Michael gave a small, shaky smile. "But now, I just want to know you. Because you're my brother. Even if we didn't grow up together, or share memories, we share blood. And that means something." Ethan broke down, covering his face with both hands. "I'm sorry," he sobbed. "It's just, I've always felt like something was missing and I never knew why. Now I do. I was missing a family." Michael reached across the table. Ethan took his hand. In that moment, I knew things would be okay. Not right away, but someday. We stayed at the cafe for hours. Ethan told us about his life. His adoptive parents, Thomas and Susan Miller, were humble, hard-working people. Thomas was a carpenter, Susan a seamstress. They didn't have much, but they loved him endlessly. They worked day and night so I could go to college, Ethan said, eyes red. "My dad died when I was 28, heart attack. My mom passed away 5 years ago from cancer. I never got the chance to repay them. Michael and I stayed quiet. That's why I never looked for my birth parents," Ethan continued. "I didn't want it to seem like they weren't enough. They were everything. But still, something always felt missing. Because you didn't have the answer," I said softly. Ethan nodded. "Yeah, there was this emptiness I never understood." Michael began telling him about Richard. How he woke up early every morning, how he worked nonstop on the farm, how he taught Michael to ride horses, and would lift him onto his shoulders to pick peaches. "He was a good man," Michael said, voice thick. "Not perfect, but good. And I believe if he had known about you earlier, he would have found you. He would have raised you. He would have given you everything." Ethan looked at him with tears in his eyes. "You really believe that?" "I do." The two men sat across from each other, strangers, yet connected by blood, by the same eyes, by the same quiet smile. That evening, Ethan invited us to his apartment. It was small, 1-bedroom, a kitchenette, a bathroom, and a little balcony, but it was clean, warm, filled with books. I looked around, feeling a strange warmth in my chest. After all these empty years, we had finally found each other. "Sorry, it's a bit messy," Ethan said shyly. "I'm not used to having guests." "It's perfectly fine," I said. We sat on the small couch. He made coffee, brought out a tin of cookies, and we talked for hours, almost as if trying to make up for a lifetime apart. Eventually, Ethan asked the question we had been expecting. "What exactly did my father leave me?" Michael and I exchanged glances. "We don't know the details yet," I said. "The will is being read in 5 days, but according to Marcella, Richard left you a portion of the farm." "The farm, yes." Ethan stayed silent for a long moment. "I don't want anything," he said softly. "I didn't come here for money or land. I came because you gave me something. Money can't buy a story or a family." Michael smiled. "I understand. But Dad wanted you to have it, and I think we should honor that." Ethan lowered his head. I don't know if I can accept it. It doesn't feel fair. You grew up with him, worked beside him, you deserve everything. I'm just a stranger. No, Michael said firmly, you're not a stranger. You're my brother that night, Michael. And I stayed at a hotel near Ethan's apartment. Before bed, my son asked, Mom, did I do the right thing? Going to find Ethan? Yes, I said, taking his hand. You did, because the truth, no matter how painful, is always better than a lie. Michael nodded. It's strange. A week ago, I was an only child, and now I have a brother. How does it feel? I asked. Scary and relieving at the same time. Like a part of me I didn't know was missing, just got healed. I smiled. Your father would be proud of you for doing what he couldn't, for facing the truth. The next morning, Ethan took us to breakfast at a small cafe near his home. We ordered pancakes and hot coffee. Then he showed us around the city, the school where he taught, the bookstore he loved, the park where he spent weekends reading. Everything was simple but warm. It felt like we were rebuilding a family from scratch. That afternoon, when we returned to the hotel, I received a call from Mr. Matthews. Mrs. Sanderson, he said seriously, I need to see you right away. It's about the will. Something I must discuss with you before the official reading. My heart tightened. What is it? I can't say over the phone, but it's important. Are you still in Sacramento? Yes. Could you come to my downtown office? I need to speak with you in person. I looked at Michael, who was watching me with concern. All right, I said. I'll be there soon. I told Michael to stay with Ethan. You two should spend some time together, I said. Just the two of you? Are you sure? I'm sure. I took a cab to Mr. Matthews' office, a glass front building downtown. On the 4th floor, the receptionist led me in. Matthews, a man in his 60s with thick glasses and a serious face, stood to greet me. Thank you for coming so quickly, he said. What's so urgent, Mr. Matthews? He opened a file. There's something about your husband's will that complicates things. What do you mean? Mr. Richard left behind 2 wills. I froze. 2? Yes. The first one, from 15 years ago, divides the farm into 2 equal parts, half for you, half for Michael. I know that one. But 2 weeks before he passed, Richard made a second will, and this one changes everything. He placed several papers in front of me. According to the new document, the farm is divided into 3 portions, 30% for you, 30% for Michael, and 40% for Ethan Miller. I was stunned. 40%. Yes, the largest share. Why? Matthews sighed. Richard left a letter of explanation, to be opened only if there was a dispute. In it, he wrote that he felt indebted to Ethan for the 47 years. Ethan lived without a father, or any chance to inherit anything. Richard wanted to make it right, even if only through land or money. I couldn't speak. He also wrote, Matthews continued, that Michael had a full childhood, a father, a home, a family, while Ethan had none of that. He wanted Ethan to know he mattered. Tears rolled down my face. Does Michael know? I whispered. No. Only you do. And now you must decide whether to tell him before the reading or let him find out with everyone else. I stayed silent. There's one more thing, he added quietly. In the letter, Richard included a clause. If you and Michael choose to forfeit your shares, the entire farm goes to Ethan. He wanted us to give it up? I stammered no. He only left it as an option if you felt it was the right thing to do. I left the office in a daze. On the way back, my mind spun. Richard had left me the hardest choice of my life. Should I tell Michael? Should I keep my share? Should I give it up? When I walked into the lobby, Michael and Ethan were laughing like true brothers. As soon as they saw me, both fell silent. Mom, are you okay? Michael asked. You look pale. I'm fine, I lied. Just tired. What did the lawyer say? Nothing important. Just some details. Michael looked unconvinced but didn't press. That night, I couldn't sleep. I watched the city lights and thought about Richard, his choices, his secrets, his regrets. I wondered how far loyalty should go and whether love ever had limits. The next morning, I sent Michael and Ethan out for breakfast. Once they left, I called Sophia and told her everything. She was silent for a moment, then asked, So what are you going to do? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to protect Michael. But another part thinks Richard was right. Ethan lost too much. What does your heart say? It says neither of them should lose anything. There must be a way for both to have peace. Then find that way, she said. And in that moment, I knew what to do. That afternoon, I called both Michael and Ethan to my room. I need to talk to you. They sat down, worry on their faces. I told them everything: the second will, the The 40%, the letter. Michael was silent. Ethan went pale. No, he said instantly. I can't accept that. It's not fair. It's what your father wanted, I said, but it's not what I want. Michael is his son, the one he raised and loved, and you're his son too, Michael said quietly. Not in the same way. Maybe not, Michael replied. But still his son. Michael took a deep breath. If Dad left you the largest share, it's because he felt he owed you. I'll respect that. I had everything a father, a home, love. You didn't. I can't give you 47 years, but I can share this with you. Ethan began to cry. I don't deserve it. Yes, you do, Michael said, because you're my brother. And because it's the right thing. I looked at my two sons. I'll respect the will too, I said. But on one condition, the farm won't be divided. They looked at me. It will stay whole. All three of us will own it, and we'll run it together as a family. Ethan, if you want, you can move to Tennessee or stay in Sacramento and visit on weekends. It doesn't matter. Michael smiled. I like that idea. Ethan looked at us, his eyes red. Really? You truly accept me as part of the family? You already are, I said softly. You always were. We just didn't know it until now. In that moment, something shifted inside me. A deep sense of relief washed over me as if the weight I'd been carrying for weeks had finally lifted. I no longer felt responsible for fixing Richard's mistakes, because I realized he hadn't broken anything. He had simply left something unfinished, and now, together, we would finish it. The return home 2 days later, we flew back to Nashville. Ethan sat by the window, quietly watching the clouds. Michael sat beside him, scrolling through photos of the farm on his phone. This is the peach orchard, Michael said. Dad planted it the year I was born. Each tree marked 1 year of my life. Ethan's eyes lit up. It's beautiful. It is, Michael replied softly. And now it's yours too. Ethan looked at him, his voice trembling. I still can't believe this. A week ago, I was just a lonely teacher. And now I have a brother, a family, a home. Michael smiled gently. Me too. It still feels strange, but a good kind of strange. From my seat across the aisle, I watched them and felt something return to me, something I hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. Preparing for Ethan. The will reading was scheduled for the following Tuesday at Mr. Matthews's office in Nashville. In the meantime, I prepared the house for Ethan's stay. I changed the guest room sheets, put fresh flowers by the bed, opened the curtains to let the sunlight in. Ethan planned to stay with us for a week before going back to Sacramento to wrap up his life there. I need to resign, he said. Pack my books. Say goodbye to a few friends. Are you sure? You don't have to do that. We can figure something out. I'm sure, he said with a small smile. All my life I felt out of place in Sacramento, like I was waiting for something. Now I know what it was. This family. Ethan sees the farm on Sunday. I drove Michael and Ethan out to the Tennessee farm. It was Ethan's first time stepping onto his father's land. As the car rolled down the dirt road between cornfields and green hills, he whispered, voice shaking, it's like a dream. Mr. Frank, the longtime farm manager, was waiting at the gate. When he saw Ethan, he froze. My lord, you look just like Mr. Richard. I introduced them. Mr. Frank, this is Ethan, Richard's son. He removed his hat, eyes moist. It's an honor, Mr. Ethan. Ethan shook his hand gently. Thank you, sir. We spent hours walking across the property. I showed them the main house, the bougainvillea-covered patio, the stone fountain, the peach orchard, the stables, and the fields where Richard worked from sunrise to sunset. Ethan said nothing for a long time, his eyes wide with awe. This is where my father lived, he murmured. Where he worked, where he dreamed. Michael led him to the oldest oak tree on the farm. This was Dad's favorite tree. He said it was over 100 years old. It'd seen 3 generations of Andersons. Ethan placed his hand on the trunk and closed his eyes. I wish I could have met him. So do I, Michael said softly. But I think he's here watching us. And finally at peace. A night of stories that night we had dinner at the farmhouse. I cooked Richard's favorites, beef stew, rice, mashed beans, and cornbread. We sat around the big wooden table that had held 38 years of family meals. This time, Ethan was with us. Mr. Frank joined. And so did my dear friend Sophia. The house filled with warmth, laughter, and stories. Sophia laughed as she spoke. He was so stubborn. Once he argued with my father for days because he wanted to plant peaches instead of corn. My father called him crazy, said peaches would never grow in this soil. But Richard did it anyway, and the next year best peaches in the county. Ethan listened carefully, hanging on to every word once Richard said. His mind on something, Sophia continued. No one could stop him. And when he met your mother, Ethan, I knew he'd marry her no matter who objected. After dinner, Michael invited us outside. We sat under the stars, beside the fountain, listening to crickets and the mountain breeze. Ethan spoke softly. Thank you, both of you. For what? Michael asked. For accepting me. For not turning me away. For giving me a place in this family. Even though I did nothing to earn it. You do deserve it, I said firmly. You didn't choose how you were born, or to be given away, or to grow up without a father. None of that was your fault. Now you have a chance to reclaim what was lost, and we're honored to do that with you. Ethan wiped his eyes. I used to wonder why my birth mother abandoned me, why she didn't want me. For years, I thought it was because I wasn't good enough. He swallowed. But now I understand. She didn't leave because she hated me. She left because she was scared, alone, and had no choice. Do you forgive her? Michael asked gently. Ethan nodded. Yes, because she did the best she could, and she gave me a good life with people who truly loved me. The Will Reading Tuesday arrived faster than expected. At 10 a.m., the three of us walked into Mr. Matthews's office. The room was solemn, dark wood walls, tall bookshelves, a large table in the center. Matthews greeted us formally. Thank you all for coming. Beside him sat Richard's estate attorney and a notary public. We took our seats. Matthews opened an envelope. I will now read the last will and testament of Mr. Forrest Richard Anderson, signed December 28th of last year. He read the legal introductions, then paused. The Anderson farm, including all land, buildings, and property, will be divided as follows. 30% to Kelly Anderson, his wife. 30% to Michael Anderson, his son. 40% to Ethan Miller, his biological son. Ethan closed his eyes. Michael reached over and squeezed his hand. Matthews continued. Additionally, all profits from the farm shall be shared equally among the three, regardless of ownership percentage, so that no one gains a financial advantage over another. I looked up in surprise. Matthews nodded gently. The farm may not be sold or divided for 20 years. It must remain intact as shared family heritage. If one of you passes away, their portion will go to the remaining two, not to outsiders. Michael smiled faintly. Dad really thought of everything? Matthews went on. Mr. Richard also left $50,000 to Ethan Miller as compensation for the years he could not be present in his life. Ethan may use this money to settle in, continue his education, or invest as he chooses. Ethan's eyes widened. $50,000? That's too much. That's what your father wanted, I said. And we'll honor it. After reading through the smaller details, bank accounts, personal belongings, Richard's car, Mr. Matthews paused. Finally, he said, Mr. Richard left 2 private letters for his sons, one for Michael and one for Ethan. He handed each of them an envelope. You may read them now or later as you wish. Michael looked at Ethan. Ethan nodded. Let's read them now. They opened their envelopes at the same time and began reading silently. The room was so quiet, I could hear my own heartbeat. I couldn't see what was written, but I could read their faces. Michael smiled as tears streamed down his cheeks. Ethan sobbed openly, overwhelmed with emotion. When they finished, the brothers looked at each other and embraced a long, tight hug, the kind only real family shares. After the reading, we left the office. The Nashville sky was bright blue, sunlight warm on our faces. We walked several blocks in silence before Ethan finally spoke. Do you know what he wrote to me? He asked, looking at Michael and me. He said he was sorry. Sorry for not being there while I grew up, for not knowing I existed, for letting 47 years pass without searching for me. His voice trembled. But he also said he was proud of me. He learned about my life, my adoptive parents, the man I've become. He told me that even though I didn't have much, I lived with joy. And to him, that mattered the most. Ethan paused, breathing shakily. At the end he wrote, Ethan, I can't give you back the years we lost, but I can give you something else. A family, a brother, and a place to belong. Live well, live happy. That's all I ever wished for you. Michael shared his letter. Dad apologized to me, he said quietly. He knew that keeping this secret would hurt me. But he wanted me to meet Ethan because he's my brother. He wrote that brothers are meant to stand by each other. He told me to take care of him, to teach him what Dad couldn't, to make him feel like he truly belongs in this family. Michael smiled at Ethan through his tears. I promised him I would. I'll be his brother not just in name, but for real. They hugged again. And together we walked to a nearby park. We sat beneath a maple tree And in that quiet moment I realized something. Richard was gone, but never truly gone. He lived in Michael, in his voice, his smile, his kindness. He lived in Ethan, in his eyes, his posture, his calm strength. He lived in the farm, in the peach trees he planted, in the land he cared for his entire life. He lived in us, in this family. And that was stronger than any will. A week later, I received a call from a hospital in Sacramento. Marcella had passed away peacefully. The nurse told me that before she died, she asked, "Did they find my son?" When she was told that Ethan knew the truth and was living with his family, Marcella smiled faintly. "Then I can go now. I have nothing left to hold me." And she closed her eyes forever. I told Ethan what had happened. He cried. I never got to talk to her, never got to tell her I forgave her. She knew, I said softly. Trust me, she knew. We held a small funeral for Marcella, just the three of us, Sophia and Mr. Frank. We buried her in the hillside cemetery near the farm, not far from where Richard rested. They couldn't be together in life, but at least in death, they were close. Maybe that was enough. That evening, we sat on the farmhouse porch under a sky full of stars, listening to the soft sound of the fountain. We talked about life, about how things rarely go as planned, and how sometimes the worst tragedies bring the most beautiful gifts. I lost my father, Michael said, but I gained a brother, and I found my father all over again. Family, Ethan added. I looked at them and smiled. I lost my husband, but I found the truth, and the truth set me free. Richard had hidden secrets. Marcella had run from her past. Ethan grew up not knowing who he really was. Michael never knew he had a brother, and I lived 38 years without knowing the whole story. But now everything was clear. No more lies. No more hiding, only truth. And that truth set all of us free. 3 months later, Ethan moved permanently to the farm. He started teaching at the local high school. On weekends, he and Michael worked the fields together, planting more peach trees, repairing the stables, upgrading irrigation. The farm began to thrive again, not just with crops, but with laughter, life, and love. One afternoon, while I was cooking, I heard them arguing outside. But it wasn't serious, just playful teasing between brothers. I told you, you plant peaches in March. Michael insisted. No, February is better. I read the research, Ethan argued. Research doesn't know everything. Experience does. Right, and you've got more experience than someone with an agricultural PhD. I've got more experience than you, little brother. They burst into laughter. I smiled through the kitchen window. Those two men were once strangers now. They were inseparable. Richard had made mistakes, yes, but in the end, he did one thing right. He brought this family together. Life always balances itself. Richard carried his secret for nearly 50 years, guilt, until his last breath. He couldn't apologize to Ethan or say goodbye to Marcella, but he left us something else. The truth, and the chance to heal. That was justice, not punishment, but redemption. 1 year after Richard's death, I visited his grave with white lilies, his favorite. Kneeling before the headstone, I whispered, Richard, I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know what comes after death. But if you can hear me, I want you to know something. Tears filled my eyes. I forgive you for the secrets, the silence, everything. Because now I understand. You were human. You were afraid. You made mistakes just like all of us. I smiled through my tears. But you did something beautiful. You brought together 2 sons who had never met. You built a family out of emptiness. And that's worth more than any secret. Rest in peace, my love. Everything is all right now, and it truly was. Though Richard had lied and caused pain, life had come full circle. Ethan found his family. Michael gained a brother. Marcella died in peace. And I found the strength to forgive and to live with truth, love, and life. It has now been 3 years since I opened that old chest in the barn. 3 years since the secret that changed my life forever. Now, sitting on the farmhouse porch with a cup of hot coffee, watching the sun paint the hills gold, I can finally say, I am at peace. The farm has changed. Ethan now lives here full-time. He turned one room into a small library, books, poetry, history, philosophy. In the evenings, I hear him reading aloud, his voice deep and calming. 6 months ago, he married a local elementary school teacher, Patricia, a gentle woman with loving eyes. The moment I met her, I knew she was the one for him. Because Ethan looks at her the same way Richard once looked at me. Michael still visits every weekend with his wife Fernanda and their 2 daughters Sophia and Valerie. The girls run across the fields just the way their father did as a boy. They adore Ethan. Uncle Ethan, tell us a story. And he sits under the old oak tree, telling tales of heroes, brave princesses, and dragons that know how to love. Michael and Ethan argue sometimes, but laugh much more because that's what brothers do. They disagree, but they never stop loving each other. Mr. Frank is still the farm manager, even in his old age. Whenever I tell him to rest, he says, "Mrs. Kelly, this land is my life. The day I stop working here will be the day I leave this world. And I understand, because this land isn't just dirt. It's memory, family home." Sophia still visits every month, bringing food, pastries, stuffed peppers, casseroles. "So you don't forget to eat properly," she always says, even though she knows I never forget. We sit by the fountain for hours talking about life, our families, and sometimes about Richard. "Do you still miss him?" she asked once. "I miss him every day," I told her, "but it doesn't hurt the same way anymore. Now it's a gentle kind of longing, like remembering a summer long gone." Sophia smiled. "He'd be proud of you for how you handled everything, for keeping this family together." "It wasn't just me," I said. "It was Michael, Ethan, and you. We all did it together." 6 months ago, an unexpected visitor came. A woman around 50 knocked on the farmhouse door, tall brown hair, worried eyes. "Are you Kelly Anderson?" she asked. "Yes, I am. Can I help you?" "My name is Cecilia Moore. I'm Marcella's cousin." My heart skipped a beat. Cecilia continued. "Marcella lived with me in Sacramento when she was pregnant with Ethan. Before she died, she asked me to give something to her son, but I didn't know how to find him, until now." She took out an envelope. "This is for Ethan." I called Ethan immediately. When he saw Cecilia, he froze. You knew Marcella?" "Yes," Cecilia said with a sad smile. "I was with her when she gave birth. I held you the moment you were born." Ethan covered his mouth, tears filling his eyes. "Really? Really? And I want you to know something. Marcella loved you with all her heart. Giving you up was the hardest thing she ever did. She cried for weeks, but she believed it was the best thing for you." Cecilia handed him the envelope. "This is a letter she wrote 20 years ago when she found out she had cancer. She asked me to give it to you if we ever met again." Ethan's hands trembled as he opened it. He read it silently. Then he began to cry. When he finished, he read it aloud to us. "My beloved son, I don't know if you will ever read this. I don't know if we will ever meet again. But there are things I must say. I'm sorry for giving you away, for not being strong enough to keep you, for taking away your chance to know your father. But I did not leave because I didn't love you. I left because I loved you too much. I had no money, no family, nothing. And you deserved everything, so I gave you the only thing I could a chance. Every day I prayed that you were loved, that you were happy, and that one day you would forgive me. If you want, I can turn this into—" Ethan folded the letter gently, slipped it back into the envelope, and hugged Cecilia tightly. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for bringing this to me." "She loved you, Ethan," Cecilia said, her own tears falling. "Never doubt that." That night, the three of us sat outside again under the stars, just as we had done so many times before. "Do you know what the strangest thing is?" Ethan asked. "What?" Michael replied. "I spent my whole life believing I was abandoned, that I wasn't good enough, that my birth parents didn't want me. But now I know that's not true. Marcella loved me, and Richard, he would have loved me if he'd only known I existed. I may not have grown up with them, may not have had what I was meant to have, but I've gained something else." "What's that?" I asked. "I have 2 families," Ethan said softly. "The one that raised me, and the one that found me." He smiled. "And that's something not everyone gets." Michael placed a hand on his shoulder. "Dad once told me that family isn't just who shares your blood, it's who shares your life." "He was right," Ethan said. "He was," I added quietly. "You two are brothers? Not because Richard said so, not because of a will, but because you chose to be." Ethan nodded, eyes shining. "And I'll choose that every day for the rest of my life." The months that followed were peaceful. The farm had its best peach harvest in years. Michael signed a deal with a juice company that shipped our products across the country. Ethan wrote a book about the history of Tennessee and the families who worked this land for generations. The book was about to be published, and I began writing to not a book, but memoirs for my grandchildren, so that one day they would understand where this family came from. Because after 3 years, I've learned one thing. Truth always finds a way to surface, no matter how long it's buried, no matter how deep the secret. The truth sets you free, and when it does, you only have 2 choices. You either let it destroy you, or you use it to build something better. Richard chose to keep the truth hidden, and it cost him everything. Ethan, Marcella, explanations he could never give me. But even through his mistakes, he left us something priceless, the chance to heal, the chance to reunite, the chance to become a family. One morning Ethan walked into the kitchen. "Kelly," he said. He no longer called me Mrs. Anderson. "I have something to tell you." "I'm listening." "Patricia and I, we're having a baby." I froze. "What?" Ethan smiled, eyes glistening. "A girl. We just found out yesterday, and we want you to be her godmother. We want you in her life. We want you to be a grandmother to her." I burst into tears. "Really, really," he said, "because you gave me something I never had. I never had a mother, and I want my daughter to have that too." 2 days later, Michael brought news of his own. "Mom," he said, "Fernanda's pregnant again." I laughed. "Another girl?" "No," he grinned. "This time it's a boy." He hugged me tightly. "We want to name him Richard, after Grandpa." My heart flooded with emotion. "Your father would have loved that." "I know. And I want him to grow up on this farm just like I did. Just like his sisters and just like Ethan's little girl will. This land has to keep going, so the next generations remember where they belong." Now I sit on the porch, watching Michael and Ethan working in the peach orchard. Patricia and Fernanda are laughing in the yard, talking about their babies on the way. My grandchildren are running around with Mr. Frank, who still teaches them how to care for the trees with patience and pride. And I realize Richard never truly left. He's here in our sons. He's here in our grandchildren. He's here in the land he loved. He's here in the family he created. Sometimes at night, when everyone is asleep, I sit by the fountain and talk to him quietly as if he can still hear me. "Look at this," I whisper. "Look at what you left behind, a family. Not a perfect one, but a beautiful one." I smile. "Even though you made mistakes, even though you kept secrets and caused pain, in the end, it was all worth it." The water trickles softly. The bougainvillea sways in the warm night breeze. The stars shimmer overhead. "Rest in peace, my love," I whisper. "Everything is all right now, and it truly is, because I've learned something I never understood before. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's remembering without pain. It's looking back without resentment. It's accepting that everyone makes mistakes and still deserves love. Family is never perfect. It's messy and sometimes painful. But it is the only thing that truly matters, because at the end of the day, when everything falls apart, when secrets come to light, when the world grows dark, family is what remains. If you're lucky enough to have one, cherish them, protect them, love them. Even when it hurts, even when it's hard, even when it's not perfect. I've also learned that truth may hurt, but it heals too, because only when you face it, when you stop running, can you be truly free. And I am free now. Free from secrets. Free from lies, free from pain, because I chose to forgive, I chose to love, I chose to move forward. If my story helps you, if these words touch your heart, if you've ever faced pain, betrayal, or the need to forgive, I want you to know something. You're not alone. We all carry secrets. We've all been hurt. We've all had to choose between resentment and forgiveness. It's not easy. It hurts. Sometimes it feels impossible, but forgiveness is the only path to peace. And family, no matter how complicated, imperfect, or broken, is always worth it. I'm 73 now. My hair's white, my hands wrinkled, my body slower, but my heart is full of love, gratitude, and peace. Because even though I lost Richard, I gained 2 sons. I gained a bigger family. I gained truth and the freedom that came with it. This morning, while I was making coffee, Ethan walked into the kitchen. "Good morning, Kelly." "Good morning, sweetheart." "Sleep well." "I did," he said softly. "I dreamed of Marcella." "That's wonderful. How was she?" "She was walking through a garden, smiling, like she'd finally found peace." A tear slipped down his cheek. When I woke up, I thought, maybe she really did find it, because we're doing okay now. And that's all she ever wanted. Michael, Ethan, Fernanda, Patricia, the 2 little girls, Sophia and Mr. Frank, were all there. We celebrated Valerie's birthday, Michael's younger daughter. There was cake, music, and laughter. The children ran through the garden while the adults talked under the old oak tree. I sat there watching all of them, my family. Beautiful, complicated, imperfect, but full of love. And I thought of Richard. In the end, he had done something good. He had created life, love, and family. And even though he wasn't here to see it, his legacy lived on in every laugh, every hug, every shared moment. I realized that life is never a straight path. It's full of twists and turns, losses that break us, and miracles that grow from our wounds. I once believed forgiveness was a weakness. But now I understand. Forgiveness is when the heart becomes strong enough to let go, to love again, and to stop letting the past control the present. Family will never be perfect. Sometimes it's the broken pieces that show us the true value of connection. Because in every laugh, every meal, every embrace, I see something simple, yet powerful. No matter how much the world changes, love is what remains. And you, do you believe forgiveness can heal? Do you think love can mend what once was lost? Share your thoughts below so we can talk about the real things in life: love, family, and kindness. And if you want to keep hearing more stories like this, stories of people walking through pain and finding peace, stay with me for the next one, because somewhere in these stories, you might just find a part of yourself.